Goeiedag! Good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. Not in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, the loving light will guide you. I know that life outside is so hard. There's a lot of things that can tear you apart. Sometimes feel lonely, but remember you're not the one and only. There's always someone there to help you, a helping hand to pull you through. There's only one thing you should do. Take my hand and join the Loving Life crew.
Goeienaand! Good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Yes, I've been following the side chat, and let me remind you, this is my intro song for the live streams here on Loving Life. It's a great little ditty that one of our subscribers put together for me, so we love it. Okay, now, before we get into our guest tonight, or introduce our guest tonight, I have some fantastic news. It's thank you, Erica, for sharing this with us. People who follow my live streams will recall that a few nights ago we had that auction of the painting. Hi Marlena, good to see you here, sweetie. Yeah, we had that auction, and the painting sold for 20,000 Rand. And just this week alone, well, I'm going to read what Erica sent me this evening. She says, Patrick confirmed that the 50,000 Rand from a donor through Loving Life and 20,000 Rand from the sale of the lion painting has been paid into Farmers Aid South African account, and they are in Macro buying groceries and staples to put together food parcels which initially will be received by 170 starving white families. The rest of the money will be spent in the same way to put together food parcels in KwaZulu-Natal, etc. Patrick will be sending you photos and videos when he has a moment to put it all together. Take your time, Patrick. I know you're a busy man. Patrick and the rest of us farmers aiders are overwhelmed by requests, so the generous donations of especially the money is incredibly appreciated, and all will go to people and families in desperate need of relief. It is becoming more and more obvious that people are beginning to starve and desperation is kicking in. This is the tragedy of this lockdown, guys. This is the real sharp end of it. Anyway, the concluding paragraph reads, please convey to everyone who has supported us financially, well, to everybody, all our subscribers, our deepest thanks. Every cent is totally accountable, 100% going to where it is intended to go. And I want to thank Patrick, Darby, Sylvia, Sybil, Henny, Shane, Tunes, and all our other angel aiders for giving their time and fewer resources freely, without any compensation whatsoever, to reach out and help during this unfolding crisis. Okay. Congratulations, Erica. You're doing a fantastic job. I know you're here in the side chat. That's great news. I'm so happy. Now, in a minute we will meet tonight's guest, Chris Elsom. He's an old fart like me, but very interesting man. Well-travelled, an author, and has some great yarns to tell us about famous people he has met during his life. Remember, you can post questions at any time. Alright guys, I'm going to get Chris on, and let's get the show on the road. Hi Chris.
Hi, Scott.
How are you, buddy?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Fine, thanks yourself.
Excellent. Now I can't see you at the moment. I can just see a little white circle that says CE.
Well, that's probably a better view of me. I've got a face for radio, man.
Okay, have you are you able to get your camera on?
It should be on as far as I know.
Yeah, I just see a CE, but see if you can just click around and try and fix that.
Let me just see what is happening here. I've got my IT guy. Let me just, Scott, if you can just give me a sec.
Sure.
I need to call.
Yep.
I'm an absolute technophobic. They set this all up for me.
Okay, not a problem.
As Murphy would have it, just give us a sec.
Yeah, not a problem. Sorry guys, we're just sorting out the camera because it's much better seeing him than seeing a little icon. He won't be a second. He's got an IT guy there. So, how is everybody tonight?
Oh, my word.
I hope you're all well. Oh, there we go. Now we've got it on. Fantastic. Thanks,
Looks like we
IT guy.
sorted the problem. Yeah. You better stay nearby.
Can you move the camera down a bit? Just a smidgen.
Down?
Yeah, just a smidgen down. Perfect. Perfect.
Right,
okay. Good stuff. Thank you. All right.
All right. Don't go too far. Don't go too far away.
Okay. We're all set.
Okay, Scott, we're all set.
We're all set. Now, Chris, we're live. We've got about 200 people watching at the moment. What I'd like to do, just to start off with, is tell us your background about growing up in South Africa and, you know, yeah, just your background. Just start from the very beginning and we'll lead up and we'll start taking off some of the stories as you go along.
Yeah, well, I was born in Cape Town, in Simonstown specifically, and I grew up in Claremont. It was a wonderful, you know, I look back at it, and it was a wonderful time in the 60s, and it was a middle class Claremont, not the upper Claremont, the lower below they call it below the line, and yet upper Claremont.
Right.
And it was a lovely neighborhood of you know, a lot of Afrikaans people, a lot of English people. My best friend in life, at the age of 5, he was Afrikaans, couldn't speak a word of English. I was English, couldn't speak a word of Afrikaans, but we became the greatest mates ever. And
fantastic. You're still friends today?
We've lost contact, unfortunately. I've been trying desperately to contact him, but he isn't around on social media. I just can't trace the guy. We unfortunately lost contact.
Right.
But we grew up wonderfully. He used to call me with very strict parents. My parents were very, you know, allowed me a lot of free reign. And he had very strict Afrikaans, NG style people. As parents, they were wonderful people. And he used to have to call me to come and play with him, and he used to shout over the fence. Everyone used to die laughing. They were 2 houses apart. And you shout over the fence, Christopher, come speel with me. And then I used to come and go to his place, and how we communicated, I still do not know to this day.
Yeah.
Because as I say, he couldn't speak English and I couldn't speak Afrikaans. But somehow we communicated. And somehow we became the greatest of mates.
Right, so you went to school in Cape Town?
I went to Golden Grove Primary School, also in Claremont. A couple of, you suppose, for context, I could give you some people, famous people there. Joel Stransky, the World Cup rugby winning fly half, was a Golden Grove boy, and he actually used to come to our place. He was a friend of my brother's, and I knew Joel Stransky very well. And yes, it was Golden Grove. It was a very, very good little primary school. I'm still going to this day. Often when I'm in Cape Town, just for nostalgic reasons, take a drive past. And yeah, it was funny. I even wrote a story about my first day at school. And it was quite an interesting thing. I didn't realize in life at that stage that there were things that were compulsory.
Yeah.
I went there the first day and I thought, I don't like this. Sat in a row and everybody's smelling like Marmite with their crayons and sitting there in a row, and I thought, this is not, I don't know, I'm not enjoying this at all. And at the first break, I made a break for it. I thought I'm going home. And I did. I walked out. And I was on the way, making my way home nicely, and a car pulled up alongside me, and there was the teacher. And I was herded and told that I was not allowed to do that, and I'd be in big trouble, and I'd get spanked the next day if I ever did that again. So my first day, I tried to do a runner, and that was my first little lesson in life. That hold on, there are certain rules here. You're not all that free, and you got to comply with this.
Well, there's one thing about. There's one thing about school, it really does change your whole perspective on life. It's rather like what's going on right now with the lockdown with COVID-19. It's a life changer, and school is definitely the same thing.
It was a shock to me. There was a lovely song by Supertramp, one of my favorite songs, called The Logical Song.
Yeah.
And it goes along the lines of, it was so, these first 5 years of life, it was so wonderful. You listen to the birds in the trees and you're free and it's all wonderful. Then they take you away to teach you to be logical, to be responsible. It is basically exactly the little experience I had as a 5-year-old going to school for the first day. And I detested it, and I resisted everything they did.
Yeah.
I wouldn't partake in anything, and I've always been that way, and I was born that way. Often people always wonder, why are you like that? Why are you don't partake in this, you don't partake in that, you always walking the other way, and I'm born like that. That's just the way I've always been. And it was a very obviously rugby orientated school. But my father took me to football in the old days. There used to be a ground at Hartleyville in Observatory, and there was a Cape Town city side there, and he used to take me as a little boy to go and watch the football. And I just fell in love with soccer, so this didn't stand me in good stead at a rugby school. And then I actually got picked up by a soccer side, and I started playing football, but that clashed with the school's rugby. So I was getting selected for rugby on Saturdays and soccer on Saturdays, and I went to soccer instead. And every Monday morning, I had to go to the principal's office, and I had to bend down and take my 3 canings. And he eventually gave up because it went on, and I just did not. I said, I am going to play soccer, and I knew on Monday morning I'm going to bend down and take my 3. And eventually he just gave up. He said, I can't break you.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not going to do it anymore. He said, I can see I'm not going to get through.
Now, Chris,
and he obviously didn't enjoy it.
I've always wondered why it was 3, because we had canines as well at Michael House, and we had a place called Scully's, and you literally, it happened at night time during the prep or when you was preparing for the next day, with your schoolwork, and you'd hear the prefect coming down the corridor. We each had these sort of classrooms that we did prep in, and you'd hear the footsteps coming down the corridor, and it was like, oh my gosh, someone's going to be caned tonight. And it was one of those awful little times in the day in school life in Michael House. And the prefect would come around the corner, he'd put his head in, and he'd say, Bolson, Scully's. You had to walk along this. It was about 400 meters. You had to walk. It's a huge school, and there's this one little room which is now actually the PA for the rector or the headmaster's office, and you had to walk up these stairs. And they were crickety and they were creaky, and you walked up these stairs and you had to wait till the prefect called your name out, and you walked into this little room. I'll never forget it. And there were two people in the room. There was a witness and the prefect. And you had to get your 3. And of course, you touched your toes when you were being caned. And caning is something foreign nowadays, isn't it? They've stopped that all over the world.
Yes, they've done away with it. I received probably, well, I know at high school I kept count, and I was one of the leading at a school called Norman Henshaw. I reached 99. I was going to go for my century. And it was the rebels in the class. I was in grade 9, which is the equivalent of standard 7 in those years. And I was on 99. We used to keep them on the back of our tie. We used to cross them off. But what happened one day there at Norman Henshaw was that I committed 2 offences the same day. And what they had forgotten was that they'd already given me 4 in the morning, and then they gave me another 3 in the afternoon, which is 7, which is actually legal. You're not allowed to get more than 6. So I got my 7 that day, and that took me to 99. And then, as I put it in my book, I said I made my stand. But I had trouble sitting down sometimes, and I had a lot of trouble sitting down that day because
I can believe it.
7, and that was it. It was a life-changing moment for me, and I realized, wow, no, and that brought me right.
Yeah.
But I did end up getting 6 of the best quite a bit later for some obscure reason. But yes, I would just like to say that on the front of corporal punishment, and I feel strongly about it. It was, I taught recently for 5 years. I would never be able to administer it myself. Never, I wouldn't be able to do it. But I don't hold a grudge. I never did against any one of those teachers that did that. They had to do it. I know I needed it. I took it. I broke the rules. I knew there was a punishment. It didn't deter me, and it certainly didn't scar me psychologically. And I just believe that because, as I say, I've had a good taste of teaching recently between 2012 and 2017, and it really is horrendous. A teacher is a completely powerless person.
Right.
And you take abuse, and there's just really nothing you can do. You can try and threaten them with detentions and demerit systems, and it just doesn't work. I mean, it's just. I envy a teacher, and I stuck it out for 5 years, and I thought, no, this is just a waste of time.
Yeah.
And
so
that's where I am today.
Getting back to so you went through school, and did you go to university or did you go straight into a career?
No, I went straight into a career. In those times, I matriculated in 1977. You had your army call-up papers before you got your matric results. And knew then that I was going to be going to the army in July of 1978. I had a choice of then taking a teaching bursary, which I was granted. And then my parents were middle class people working, both my mom and dad working, and I thought, it's an unfair burden to place on them. 6 years before I earned my own salary check, 4 years studying, 2 years in the army. And I was fortunate that my mother at that point in time was working with the Department of Telecommunications in Cape Town. And they had the massive telex room. There were thousands of teleprinters going all day long, and people operating those long before email times. And she got me in there. Obviously, we used to call it in those days, in the privileged times, I met some colorful characters there, very bright people who could have really succeeded in private sector, but the one guy specifically used to tell me, he says, this is sheltered employment. He said, enjoy it. He says, you can do what you like here. They will never fire you. He says, and it was wonderful. But I did it. The reason I took it up was because they paid me for the 2 years. And I saved that salary of that I was earning for those 2 years in the army, and I came out with a big advantage. In those days, I can't recall what it was. We earned ridiculous money. It was 180 Rand a month or 200 Rand a month. I can't remember, 380, whatever it was. It was ridiculous. But I saved a whole lot. And then I actually set up my own little business shortly thereafter, after working back about 2 years for them, because that was the contract. You could go into the army, get your full salary, and then you need to obviously work out the 2-year
Right.
contract period. But I picked up fantastic skills there. It was in the communications. I learned how to type. They taught me how to type, which became very good training for me to be, I sort of dabbled in journalism, and I do write columns, and I have written books. So typing is a wonderful. I detested it at the time, but I realized what a wonderful advantage it ultimately was.
Right. Now, you in your book you talk about Nam or Namibia. Was this during the 2 years you were in the army, or was this at a later stage?
This is the 2 years in the army.
So what happened?
Basically, well, there's a lot happened. I went through it, and I'm not going to delve into it too deeply because it affected my life. But I came out of it with a tremendous amount of post-stress
PTSD. Yeah.
PTSD, yes. Quite a bit. I didn't know how to handle it. Basically, how I summed it up, and I'll go back to it now, but I just wanted to, because I feel this is a big issue for me.
Right.
At that time, we were, up there, and we did our 2 years, and we saw awful things, particularly the guys that were on the border at Angola, and I was right on that border at Ogongo, and I lost a lot of friends there. I left there, and I'll tell you the entire story. It was quite a story. We were at Ogongo, and we completed our 2 stints, and we left, and the call up a year later, the guys that relieved us went up. We had a little over, I think it was about a little over 2.5 months to go. And we were just going to while away our time back at the base because we had done our time. And the guys that relieved us were wiped out. The whole entire squad, absolutely, totally wiped out.
Wow.
And
was this with a bomb or something?
It was a hand grenade. It was actually a hand grenade accident. It was a fool who had walked in there playing the game and pulled the pin, dropped the hand grenade. He was obviously had many beers, and he blew up his entire tent. He blew everywhere. 1 or 2 guys survived with horrific injuries, but basically they were all casualties.
Wow.
So we were then summoned. Would we then please? There was obviously a massive problem. The entire signal, we were signalers. The entire signal squad was gone, and they approached us. And I was the corporal, and there was 2 friends of mine were with me, and it was terribly boring being back in Uppington after being on the border. The life in the bases back in South Africa was awful. It was tedious, boring parades, stupid instructors trying to assert their little authorities on you, and we didn't have the time for it. We'd been in the bush for a year and a bit, and we were getting extremely frustrated. And the 2 friends of mine, they said they leapt at the opportunity, and I said, no, I've got a terrible feeling about this. I don't think we should do it. And I was their corporal, and I said, no, guys, no, let them get somebody else. Let them go to Heidelberg. Let them pull someone else.
Yeah.
But they eventually were working on my case, and I thought I couldn't let them go on their own, and I went with them. And I had a terrible sense of foreboding that this was not going to be good. And I warned them. I said, guys, I've got an awful feeling. We should not be doing this. Young, and you just, And I thought maybe it is just my mind playing tricks. But I remember lying on the back of the truck as we were going back the 3rd time. And I had this awful feeling we were going past the Tosha Pan and all these beautiful, beautiful places, which was a war zone at that stage. And I had this icy, awful foreboding. And I also thought my mind's playing tricks on me. And it turned out that I came back alone with their 2 bodies. They didn't come back.
Oh, wow.
And that was the thing that caused me tremendous. Now, you can imagine, as I say, Scott, this happened shortly before we had already celebrated our 40 days. It was a couple of weeks to go.
Right.
And this happened. And I had to, it was quite a story. I went in the morning when it happened, and I went to the major. He was a chap called Major Adams. I don't know if he's listening, he'll remember this. And I told him I want to go back with them. I want to go to the funerals. And he thought I was just being opportunistic.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, well, you want to take a pass here? And I got so upset. I said, listen. And you could see the intent, the look. I said, I'll shoot you. So I'm telling you right now, you're not standing here, I'll shoot you. He looked at me with his wide eyes and he said, go back to your tent. So I see the MPs come about an hour later. I think, here we go, I'm off to detention barracks. It wouldn't be the first time. Well, it wasn't detention barracks before, but it was. I was confined. I had to do CB with a recce sergeant major for other transgressions. And I saw the MPs coming. I thought, well, that's it. I'm off to DB with 2-3 weeks to go in the army. They're going to lock me up. And the MPs picked me up, told me, grab your kit, took me to the airport, put me on the plane with my two friends that passed. So I flew back to Pretoria, and I went to their funerals. And then the issue was, and as I put it, the next thing, I'm out of the army. You clear out. I had nobody there. I was in Uppington. My family couldn't get there. I walked out. A lot of people had their families there. They were throwing their berets in the air. They were celebrating. I was absolutely numb, stone, ice cold. I had absolutely no emotion. I didn't know what to do. I had an air ticket. I was walking towards the airport, which is about 8 kilometers away. Extremely hot day. And I didn't know what to do. And I thought, I can't go back. There's no chance I could go back. And I can't. What am I going to do? I can't just go fitting again. This is just not something I can do. And I was actually going to turn around because they came on the very last day before we cleared out, and they actually wanted to sign. Then they wanted to sign guys who wanted to become career. They knew that the guys would make up their mind on that day would be the genuine sort of career soldiers, and they came there recruiting those soldiers who wants to sign on to stay.
Right.
And I didn't at that stage. And then I thought to myself, what, I'm going to go back. I can't go back to normal life. I just can't. And I was on the edge of turning around, and a car pulled up alongside me, and some Afrikaans people, waar gaan jy sien, and dit and that. So I said, I'm going to the lughaven, and I said, no, don't worry. I said, because I wasn't quite sure. I still thought, I'm going to turn around and take them up on their offer. And they said, nee, klim in. And eventually they took me to the airport, and I got on the plane, I got to Cape Town. 3 days later, and I wrote this in this book, I was standing on Rondebosch Station. I'm a normal civilian again.
Right.
3 days later, and I'm looking at the sea of faces, reading their Cape Times, and this all these people going about their thing, and 3 days before I was in the army, and I'm now expected just to go straight back to work and carry on with my life. So I spent there was a long period of time. It was about an 8-year period of time with severe post-traumatic stress. I didn't want to go to parties with my friends. They used to say, what's happened to you? And I could never speak. I never spoke about it.
Right.
Never spoke about it. For 8 years, I never mentioned a solitary word to anybody. They all said, something happened. What happened? Why? What? You're different. You're not such fun anymore. And I couldn't talk about it. And eventually I did. It broke, and that's when it really came down. I didn't realize. All I did was I just put a lid on it, like it didn't happen.
Yeah. No,
so and I go back to that, and I think there are thousands of other guys that experience the same thing. Thousands upon thousands.
Yeah.
There's no way that they didn't debrief you. There was no mechanism there to help you cope. We were just released back into society, go back to your job.
Yeah.
And then for the next 10 years, you had the privilege of an invitation every year to go for 3 months or a month. And I obviously did my absolute level best to get out of every single one of them. I concocted all sorts of stories to get deferments and postponements, and succeeded quite well most of the time, but sometimes I did get nabbed. And I had to go do those camps, and eventually I ended up being court-martialed for writing. I received a call up to oversee the 1990, and by that stage I was really tired of the army. You're talking from 1978 right to 1994. They're still,
right.
Every year you get your letter. And we were supposed to oversee the 1994 election, and they called us into a big briefing. And now they were worried about the AWB, then Mr. Toblanche, fellow that used to like his brandy and horses, disrupting the election, and we now got to go there and oversee this election so that these right-wingers don't disrupt the election. And I thought to myself, in 1978 when I got called up, I was sent to Namibia, not even my own country, to fight an enemy called SWAPO, who now is the government in Namibia. Then I was told that the next enemy is the ANC, and we came home, and we were now securing Koeberg nuclear power station in case the ANC was going to attack it. And then they now tell me my new enemy is the AWB. And I thought, hold on, man. What's going on here? You can't just tell me who my enemy is. I've had SWAPO as my enemy. It wasn't even my government, it was in another country. The ANC is now our government. It was going to become, I knew then it was going to become our government. They were no longer the enemy. Now it was the AWB. And I just wrote a very rude response when they declined my application for deferment. I took a massive, big black khaki pen and I wrote, which I cannot repeat and I won't say now, but you would certainly...
I can understand what you're talking about.
It require much imagination to know what I said then. I wrote it in big black capital letters in a khaki. And then I got... they didn't even court-martial me. It was straight summons to the magistrates' court. Automatic 2-year prison term. You couldn't beat it. It was the draft. It was a conscription act. You couldn't beat it. And I was looking at 2 years in prison, but I actually did beat it. And quite miraculously, I did beat it. It was quite a funny story. But yeah, no, that was, you find that, 78, if you look at it today and you look at today, and you see how the world has changed. And how these young people, they have absolutely no idea what we went through.
Yeah. Now,
we had no choice.
Yeah, talking about these times, I mean, first of all, I've got to say that I think everybody who's watching right now has their own personal cross to bear. I think this is just part of life. It's part of experience. I know I have. There are things that happen in your life that impact you tremendously, and I think everybody has this. And you know, it's nice to know that we're not alone when we have something like this, that everybody shares the same kind of challenges and burdens. So I understand exactly where you're coming from when you talk about PTSD. Now, something you talked about the 1994 election. Something quite remarkable happened on that day, didn't it? Do you want to tell us what happened on that day?
It was another one of my anti-social, if you want to call it, or anti-authority escapades. I decided on that day, it was the election, 1994. I did a quick demographic calculation in my head, and I thought, well, my vote's not going to make any difference. And I thought, I'm going fishing instead. I love fishing. I was lucky enough to be living in the area, a beautiful area called the Wilderness. And a lot of people say that's where I belong, because I am a bit of a voice in the wilderness, but it's a literal place. It exists, the wilderness. And I went down to the wilderness, and I was going fishing, and I was in the water getting my prawns. And P.W. Botha, he was the ex-president. F.W. de Klerk had succeeded him, but he was former president. P.W. Botha lived on the shore of the wilderness, the lagoon. And while I was busy pumping prawns, and I thought, it's safe, he won't be around, he's probably campaigning for his old parties, because everyone sort of stayed away from him because they knew this was P.W. Botha's front garden, basically, that you can... No, I thought I'll take a chance, and I was busy pumping prawns, and the next thing I saw, this squad of guys coming down in their suits and sunglasses and brawn and black ties, and I thought, I was too scared to even look up. I just thought, I hope they don't even come near me, and I just carried on pumping my prawns, and please don't, picturing somebody snapping on rubber gloves and all sorts of things happening. And I see LPW comes walking across the road to me with that big booming voice I'd heard on TV so many thousand times, with that finger wagging. And he comes walking up to me and he lifts his hat in, unbelievable. He tilts his hat, he had his hat on. Môre, seun, he says to me. So I say, Môre, oom, and I still remember chastising myself. Here I'm calling the former president of South Africa oom, He's not my oom, and in actual fact, it was a very strange. There's something quite peculiar about the whole thing, because he was central in that whole PTSD issue that I had.
Yeah,
he was the guy who extended our stay in the army by 6 months. We had an initial call up of 18, and then he extended it to 2 years. And it was in that period that I experienced that. So I hated P.W. Botha up to that point. I really did. I thought you did it. If we didn't have to stay that extra 6 months, this probably wouldn't have happened.
Right.
And so he was central in that. But now I meet him, this is 13 years later, And I had no resentment towards him at all. I sort of dealt with it. And anyway, we had a lovely conversation. So he says to me, are you going to, obviously all in Afrikaans, gaan jy stem? So I lied. I said, yeah, oom, later. So we chat on, and eventually he said, jy moet. Very authoritative. Jy moet not stem. I said, ja, nee, oom, I was getting cross with myself for repeating oom. I said, stop calling him oom. Anyway, so eventually he says, okay, good luck. He says, listen, if you catch a fish, as you iets vang, bring my, sal jy vir my bring? And I said, yes, I will. And I meant it. I thought, wow, yeah, if I catch something, I'm going to go give it to him if I catch a fish. I didn't catch it. That's why the title of the story was The Big Crocodile, because he had the notorious name, The Big Crocodile, for his you could snap your head off, figuratively speaking. And he deserved that. He was a very powerful man, a very omnipresent man, and he was called the Big Crocodile. And there I was in the Wilderness River talking to the Big Crocodile, and then I thought I'd take him a fish if I had it. And that's why I titled the story "The Big Crocodile and the Fish That Didn't Bite on Election Day." And I was quite disappointed that I didn't have a fish to take him.
Yeah.
But what struck me a lot there was that I actually had no resentment. I'd buried that resentment toward him completely.
I think when you meet someone, it kind of gives a whole new perspective, because when they're in the distance, you have no contact. You can build up this resentment, but actually being face to face, it kind of brings the reality of the person to you.
Very, very, very much so. He was, as I say, he was polite, tilted his hat when he left and greeted, and it was a sort of a day, a very eventful day, that I could actually bury that chapter.
Right. Well, it's probably supposed to happen.
I could bury it. Yes, it was, as I say, I've had several of these kinds of weird experiences, meeting very strange people in strange circumstances, just happened to be there, and that's what prompted me to write. I thought, these stories I've got to write.
Yeah.
You don't get to, these things are not coincidental. They may be, I don't know, is it serendipity? Who knows who steers all these things? But I thought, all these things, I'm going to write them, and I'm going to try and make as much fun out of it as I can, and I certainly did have as much fun of it. And what happened ultimately, what I didn't tell him that day, and he used to be the commander of the South African Defence Force in those times, or earlier times,
right,
before he became the Prime Minister, was that I was also AWOL from the army while I was in the water there. I wasn't not only shunning my duty as a voter, I'd written, as I say, a khaki pen, and I didn't pitch for the army call-up on that day.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell him that I was also AWOL from the army, and I wonder what he would have thought. And I don't think he would have actually minded, because he wasn't really commander of that army anymore. In actual fact, he was virtually their new enemy. And,
well, I have to ask you.
I wondered how you would attack it.
I have to ask you about that particular question, because F.W. de Klerk basically shafted P.W. Botha. Did you get a chance to talk to Botha about that?
No, it was a passing. He had his whole entourage of guys. He was going for his morning walk, and he had his dog and all sorts of things. No, we didn't get a chance to discuss politics. He just, as I say, he was trying to say, "Go, gaan stem, seun, you would stem, stem, tell," and all those things. And
yeah,
and I lied. I have to say, I lied. I got him back. I lied to him.
Right.
So,
now,
yeah, no, it was a very interesting encounter.
We're talking about 1994 and the election. Now, that was when the interim government came in for a couple of years, and then it obviously went to the ANC. You grew up in the times pre-1994. How has South Africa changed for you since it became a so-called democracy?
It is very difficult to draw comparisons. I was never ever, and there's a lot of people don't get this. I never supported the National Party. They used to win the elections in the country with about a 55% majority, I think just over 50%. So half the people were for the National Party and apartheid, and half, or not quite half, weren't. And I was very anti. I detested the apartheid system. I detested the the silly, petty racism. I really did not have much respect for them. But you get now in post 94, you get branded as a privileged, previously privileged, and maybe we were to an extent. We could, we were certainly. There was sheltered employment offered to us in the government departments and all those things. No one can deny. But we didn't all support apartheid. We didn't all sign up for it. There were quite a lot of us that fought it. And those people are not being recognized. You're all branded today as a person of previous privilege as a white man. And I think it's got completely, we've reversed it. We basically, it's not a free society. This South Africa is not free. It's still a racist society, and it's still a society that discriminates. And this whole Rainbow Nation thing with Nelson Mandela, when he put that 1995, when he put that rugby jersey on at the World Cup, that was, you couldn't switch on a TV without the whole world going gaga about this miracle that had happened in South Africa. And for me, it just was not. It was not. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello?
I'm engrossed. I'm listening to you. Yeah. No. Yeah, just carry on. I'm right, listening. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. And then so we had this whole Madiba magic period, and I didn't, as I say, I didn't vote in 1994 because I knew that the demographics are skewed. You have a 55% rural population that will vote on tribal lines, and that's just the way it is. And I knew this simple democracy could not work. It would never be heading for a one-party state. You're never going to vote the ANC out. It's not going to happen. Never, ever, not going to happen.
Right.
And certainly not in the next decades to come. It's not going to happen.
Well, before we get back to South Africa today, and we'll talk about that just now, what I'd like to talk about now is some of your trips, because you've done a lot of traveling, extensive traveling overseas, and you've seen some very strange things happening. Tell us what you saw at the Dead Sea in Israel.
I was on holiday in Israel and with a friend of mine, his name is Joel, and we were in the Dead Sea, and we were bobbing around there. And the Dead Sea, I don't know anyone out there been to the Dead Sea. There's quite a few things you need to know about the Dead Sea, and it's basically, because it's so saline and dense, it is extremely uncomfortable initially on a certain orifice when you go into it, and it's an initiation you have to go through. It lasts a good few minutes, but I'd read up on it. They said just bear with it; it will subside. So we were through that phase and now quite comfortable. Felt like somebody with a blowtorch was trying to correct a few things, But anyway, we went through this phase, and now we were pretty comfortable bobbing around in the Red Sea. And there was a long boardwalk that came out from the resorts, because the Dead Sea had dried up quite a bit. And then you would go there, and they would warn you not to dive in. You had to go lower yourself in on stairs, and be very careful not to get your face or splashed, because it really is excruciating. It's like it would be like imagine a bath full of Dettol.
Right.
But this is even worse. This is 100 times worse. You get that in your eye, you are in excruciating pain. So anyway, we were sitting there bobbing in, and I saw this down this boardwalk coming down. I saw this muscular torso, and I looked at this guy, and I thought, who does this idiot think he is? This rippling, muscled guy, and he's come in. He's got this beautiful blonde woman in tow, and she's wearing a leopard skin bikini. Just laughed, and I said to my mate, was reading the Jerusalem Post. He had it in that you could read the newspaper in the water.
Yeah.
I said, Joel, look at this Wally. Check this Wally out. So I said, what does he think he is? Does he think he's Rambo or something? So I turn around, I'm nauseated with this guy. I think, what an absolute vain idiot. I'm not even going to bother looking at it. It's nauseating me. So I turn my back on them. And the next thing I hear this enormous splash. And I thought, I turned and I saw this froth in the water behind me, and I thought, what on earth is that? And I saw this person come out of the water like a torpedo, with this contorted face. The sound that he made there, I have never heard in my life. It was the sound of a primal scream. It was a sound I've never heard in my life.
All right.
A howl. It was like if you're castrating a pig, probably, but a lot more baritone than that. When you, I don't know anyone out there knows about castrating pigs, but I was on a farm where they did it regularly, and it's not a pleasant sound. Well, he made that sound, but it was sort of slowed down. And we got him out of the water, put him on the side, and he was coughing, spluttering, burping, sneezing, you name it, all at once. Just about exploding, wailing, crying, from a big, muscular, impressive physical presence coming down. He was like a little heap, like a little baby in fetal position, and he was in some distress. And then they managed to get him up toward a shower, and they carried him away. And he had a couple of guys with him in tracksuits. I should have then sort of picked it up. He was quite an important person. He had some guys in tracksuits with him. And they took him to a shower about 100 meters further up the gangplank, and he went and showered there, and he was coughing and spluttering and wailing and going crazy. But now, this whole incident, I have a terribly loud laugh, and it's a problem for me. I laugh at funerals. I've got to pretend I'm crying, and it's always at the most inappropriate time. So I now found this hysterical. And I started laughing, and I was sitting on the seawater, and this is carrying, and I couldn't stop this. I was actually, fortunately, I was in the Dead Sea where you can't sink, because if I was in a normal ocean, I would have probably drowned, because I was paralyzed with laughter. My stomach was absolutely knotted. I couldn't, you just couldn't control it. And I'm laughing, and this blonde that he had with him shoots me this very, very, very stern, disapproving glare. And I thought, oh no, but I just couldn't stop laughing. And eventually I managed to sort of subside, and then she shot me another. She looked at me again, and she cracked up laughing. As he was still up 100 meters ahead of the shower, she didn't go and join him, and she started laughing, and she also couldn't. She knew she couldn't go there, because she also found it absolutely hilarious. And it turns out 8 years later that I found out that it actually was Sylvester Stallone. It was Rambo. They were shooting Rambo 4 at the Masada nearby, and it actually was him. And I had the privilege of witnessing probably one of the most idiotic acts I've ever seen in my life. And apparently he was warned by his crew that you do not dive into the Dead Sea, and he apparently... he said he's going to do it. Why can't he do it? He's Sylvester Stallone. He's Rambo. He was in critical condition in the hospital for 4 days. He nearly died. It was actually very serious.
Wow.
And people can go and Google the whole story. It's there. That's how I came upon it. And I thought, my word, it was him. It wasn't some guy pretending to be. It was Rambo.
Right. Now, you had some other interesting events happen to you in Israel, didn't you?
Yes, Israel. I found out that via my mother, we were brought up in a very secular environment. We weren't church-going people. I was the only guy in our neighborhood who didn't go to Sunday school. And I was sort of, but I discovered that through my mother, who was Danish, Jewish, that I, and through her mother, and etc., that I was actually I'm a Jewish person. So, but I was at that stage a Christian, and I still am. And it was quite something for me to deal with. And I've always, funny enough, discovered that I gravitated towards Jewish people. With friends at school, I used to protect them when they got, used to get some very silly kids that can be very, very, how kids are, they pick on people. And I used to protect a lot of the guys when they used to start that kind of nonsense. But I had an incredible experience there. So I visited Israel, obviously. What happened after, funny enough, shortly after that incident with P.W. Botha, and that's when I decided that I needed to clear my head. I needed to spend some time with myself. And I thought, what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and do a stint on a kibbutz in Israel. just get out of South Africa. I wasn't happy about the situation, I wasn't sure I was ever going to come back. So I decided I was going to go do that. So I went out there for a year, and I spent a year in a kibbutz there. And what an experience that was. That was quite something. And over there, I met a guy, a New Zealander, and his name was Willie, and he was a very high-profile investment chap in the banking fraternity. And he was older. We stuck out like sore thumbs. I was in my 30s. Mostly you get, people just leaving school at 18, 19, and they come and do their little kibbutz thing there.
Right.
But he and I stood out because we were quite a bit older. And it was actually quite pleasant because they all looked up to you, and it was quite kind of unique. And they used to come talk to you and find out what your story was, all that thing. It was quite a bit, sort of a celebrity. So I met Willie, and I wrote a story called Willie, the burnt-out banker and the Thai mafia. And basically what it came down to was Willie he was a small Maori guy from New Zealand, highly intelligent, as I say, one of the top investment brokers in New Zealand.
Right.
Tennis courts, Ferraris, you name it. And he told me his story. He used to work 18 hours a day, hardly saw his wife and kids, weekends. Spent no quality time with his family, but he was doing a great job for them. I mean, they were living a life. I mean, his wife used to drive around in luxury cars, and he had tennis courts, heated swimming pools, you name it. He didn't realize, he thought that was sufficient. And his wife left him for a teacher, of all things. Just an ordinary teacher, and he couldn't do a thing about it. All his high-powered income that he had, everything he had, there was nothing that he could actually do to change her mind. He said, I fall in love. He said, yes, but look, he's just a teacher. I'm the son. I'll do better. She says, I've fallen in love with him. And he couldn't do it. He was powerless. So he went through the same thing. I went through my post-traumatic stress. His meltdown was he had his portfolio, and they were riding high, and he was doing extremely well, but his personal life had hit rock bottom.
Right.
And he went out there to also clear his head. Funny enough, we bumped into each other at that time, and he was there too, and we became good friends, and we had some fantastic chats. And he was a small guy, and what happened was they used to have a lot of Thailand contract workers there, and these guys used to get drunk and silly, and they used to have their little mafia rival gangs, and they used to, just do all these idiotic things on a Friday night, because that was the night that everybody used to be able to go to the pub. They used to have a pub there, and you could just, go and drink your 6 shekel vodka or whatever it was, and that was your day's break, because on Sunday you'd be back at work. So what happened was they used to attack him on the way back from the pub, and he got so sick and tired of it. He said one night what he did was, because he couldn't identify them. I always say, how did they conduct identity parades in China? How did they describe the guys? And it's basically the same with his Thai chaps. He couldn't identify his attackers. So one night he thought, well, he's going to get clever. He's going to mark one of them. So what he did was he took a bite out of the guy's cheek. A chunk.
That's a way to mark someone.
He bit this guy. So the next day they managed to track down, obviously, the guy. There's no ways he could hide that. And they managed to track it down. And then they left him alone, because, they now knew that's what he would do. He said he just held on to one of them, and he bit with all his might.
Yeah.
So what happened later, this one night there was an American, there was all sorts of people from Canada, and it was wonderful, Denmark, and, all the youngsters doing their backpacking thing. It was a cosmopolitan environment. All these people, they called them volunteers. They used to come and do their little stunts on the farms there. But anyway, one of the Thai mafia guys, they raped an American girl on the Meshavim, and it was a very serious thing. They hadn't really gotten to that stage, but they were now getting out of hand, and she obviously couldn't identify the people who attacked her as well.
Right.
But I made friends with a chap there, and he called himself King, and he was one of the leaders of the whole Thai fraternity there. And he came to me, because I was older, and he sort of respected me, and he came to me, he tipped me off about who the culprits were. And I said, okay, thanks, man. And we went and we had a look at this, and when we drove past the place where these guys who he had fingered, and we drove slowly, because there were 3 of us. There were 3 of us that went past, and we had a look just to recce the place out, see where it was. The one guy made a throat-slitting gesture toward us, and I said, well, that's it. That seals the deal. So we had what we did was we actually went there, we sorted them out, and told them obviously, that the next time we come back it's going to get a lot worse. And then we got a word from this chap King that we had to be very careful. A couple of weeks later, they were going to take revenge on us. They'd all united their different factions, but they were all now going to come for us. And there were three of us. It was myself and a chap from South Africa, and a chap from South Africa, and another guy from Canada. So what we did was we feigned that what we normally do on a Friday night. We lit a fire, and we were doing our usual thing, but we didn't drink. We knew that there was something coming. And what we had actually set up with another farmer was that we would attract them to his plot, and that we would then deal with these guys. He was getting his brothers to come through from Tel Aviv to help us. They were going to come and help us sort this lot out, because it had become a hell of a problem on these. I don't know if you're familiar with how the Moshavims and the kibbutzes work, but each farmer is usually a collective of about 20 or 30 farmers with a certain amount of land, and they all got their working crews, but they all pool everything.
Right.
So there was a problem with these factions of Thais working in the different farms. They were all just numbered farms, and that was getting out of hand. So we waited for these chaps that came, and eventually we lured them to, this chap's name was Roy, the farmer. He had his brothers waiting. He said, just get them to my property and then we'll sort them out. And we did that, and they came, and we drew them onto the property. And when we got to the property, we had our backs to the wall, and I knocked on the door, and now, because we now know this is the plan, Roy's here, he's got his brothers here. And I knock, and no one answers, and no one answers, and no one answers, and I think, oh my word, and this crowd's getting closer and closer, and there's a serious crowd of probably 30, 40 odd people.
Wow.
Three of us. So we, eventually the door opens, and he has this frail little old Israeli woman. It was this farmer's mother, and she's frail, and I said, well, where's Roy? She could hardly speak English. She said, no, Roy, there's a problem. Roy's gone. He's not here. I said, what? She says, no, his brothers make an accident in the desert. Because we were in the desert. They rolled their car in the desert, and he had to go out and help them. So it was the three of us standing there with this crowd. And they were youngsters. They were 20. I was in my 30s. So I had to do the leadership thing. And then the next thing, a rock goes flying through the lounge window. So I said, look, close the door, said the woman. So I turned around to these guys and said, listen, chaps, there's only one way out of this. Attack is the best form of defense. We're just going to have to, we can't run. They're going to come for us. We're just going to have to call the bluff. We're not drunk. Let's just go. And anyway, we did, and we succeeded in dispersing them and sending several of them to hospital in the process. It was nothing I was too proud of. It was very surreal, the whole event. It was crazy. And the next day there was a contingent of police that arrived, because there were 8 guys in hospital in fairly serious condition, and they needed to investigate this, and the farmers were all fighting with each other because half of their workforces weren't able to work, and one was blaming the other, and there was a commotion, and there was a huge Israeli police commissioner there was a sort of an impromptu court that they'd set up there. And it was all in Hebrew, so we didn't know what on earth was going on. And this carried on, and he was a very morose, huge, very fearsome-looking fella. And I remember I saw that movie, Midnight Express, and he sort of reminded me of that Turkish big fat police warden or whoever it was in that movie, that very, very, very scary fella. He looked just like it. It was a big, fat Israeli guy, and he was no expression in his face. And eventually they told me to stay behind. I thought, what now? Anyway, so it comes out that they fingered me as being the biggest sort of cause of the casualties and that type of thing. I don't know if I was. I can hardly remember what happened. It was strange, but anyway. So I thought, oh, here we go. That's it. Off to jail in Beersheba in Israel. I'm going to have my own little Midnight Express experience in Israel. And
sorry, guys, we just seem to have lost the connection.
The night before.
Sorry, carry on. Yeah, we lost your connection for a few seconds. That's fine.
We've got slow internet here.
Yeah, so
if we
you
don't
had
have
the
load
Midnight
shedding-
Express experience, so yeah, from there.
Yes, and then yes, and then they brought in the final witness, and she was there, and I thought, oh my word, I just brought that whole fiasco to her doorstep, broken the window. The sons had rolled their motor car in the desert because of us, and she's now going to obviously send me straight to jail. So it was carried on, and they were talking in Hebrew, and I thought, well, that's it. And when it finished, she walked out, and nothing was said. I was dismissed. I told her to go outside, and then my farmer, he was quite a character, very dry-witted guy. We got on extremely well. We had wonderful discussions, myself and old Doobie, and because obviously I was a lot older, and he would come and chat to me. And I said, Doobie, now what? And he knew that I was really, really, really frightened. I really thought I'd now been, that was me going off to jail in the van. And he just kept a dead face. And eventually I said, what did she say, Doobie? And he just came over and she cracked a smile. And he said, she said, you fight good. You fight good. And then they loaded up the Thai, all of the, I don't know how many, 20, 30 of them, they all got deported. And it was quite ironic that it wasn't Roy, he was a huge mountain of a man, very big Israeli strong farmer, or his two brothers that saved me. It was actually his old little frail mother who saved me at the end of the day, and she came and testified that we were actually heroes and what we did, and that basically that was my near Midnight Express experience in Israel.
Okay, now I just want to say that we got well over 300 people watching at the moment, and just welcome to everybody watching. We're talking to Chris. He's got a fascinating story to tell us. It's basically about his life. He's an author. He's had some very interesting experiences. We've covered a few of them already. If you have questions, please just put them into the side chat. Marlena, that's very sweet. Thank you, sweetie. Okay, now getting back to you, Chris. Sorry, I just lost my concentration for a second there. Now, you had a business which you lost to a drug syndicate in 2009. What actually happened there?
I was in the tire industry for a long time, and I eventually ended up I owned 3 franchises at one time, and then I got out of them. They were too much to handle, and then we then had 2, one out at N1 City in Goodwood and one in Tableview, still there to this day. We became aware of a problem, cash flow problem. Our numbers were excellent, our turnover was excellent, the profit was excellent, but somehow we just found it getting a little bit tighter and tighter and tighter. And I said, there's something wrong here. This is impossible.
Right.
And there can only be 2 things wrong, and that either someone's taking money or someone's taking stock. And we eventually did get it narrowed down to the fact that we were actually there was an operation operating with stock, but we didn't know the extent of it at that stage. There were 2 stores involved, and they were basically transferring stock from each other, but not delivering. So it would be taken off the system and then diverted wherever they wanted it to go. And we tightened up that little loophole. And then we sold the one store, the N1 City store, because we needed to cash inject into the other one, obviously, because we had taken quite a knock. It was, at the end of the day, just about R1 million worth of stock that disappeared.
Wow.
So we'd taken a hell of a strain, and so we sold the one just to float the other, and then we thought that was the problem solved. Unfortunately, it wasn't the problem solved, because we again, very shortly thereafter, discovered that again we were going into quite getting tighter and tighter to pay the bills. And I said, well, this is very strange. And I went in and did a stock take, and then I discovered again that we'd lost, in actual fact at that stage it was over 600,000 again.
Wow.
And then we had to do investigations, obviously. We had to what is happening here, and then we discovered that what was happening was that we employed quite a few people, and just about all of them, it all came out eventually that they were all on whatever it is, crack cocaine and whatever the things are that they do. And they were basically involved with the Nigerian suppliers. And how I got wind of it was the guy, we were at a service station, and why he took this long to actually tell me about it was quite curious. But he actually came to me and said, "Are you aware that this one manager of yours comes here at 3 in the morning sometimes?" I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, he just noticed that he often comes in at 3 in the morning because he had the keys." I said, "Well, that's extremely strange. There's no reason for him to come here at 3 o'clock in the morning." And that's when we discovered what it was, and we then discovered it was a drug syndicate that was operating. And we went into liquidation, and that's how I lost the business and a couple of homes and a couple of cars, and was brought right back down to earth. And it was, that was my little experience with crime. I didn't push the court case because it was unfortunately involved people that I was close to, so not my direct family, but my partner's family. And if I did push the case, they would have also, been incriminated, and they would have also probably be facing jail terms. So I actually just let it ride out. I wrote it off. And that's when I wrote my book. I thought it's time for my next chapter in my life. I'm done with the rubber industry and the tie industry, and it was a wonderful industry. Met fantastic people like Kobus Visser, the rugby player, and Hansie Cronje and Deepak Chopra, and you name it. I was brought into contact with all sorts of people.
Yeah.
And it was time for a new chapter in my life. I'm going to go into writing. I took a hiatus. I started writing. I went up to a farm up in the Free State. That's where the pigs were castrated. And it was wonderful. I managed to clear my...
Tell us about the Lost Tribe, Flying Pigs and Other Eerie Tales. Is this what you're talking about there?
I'm talking... No. That was just a metaphor. What I used there, that was a parody of the New South Africa as a animal farm rewrite. And basically this was how I put it. I said, eerily, the liberated New South Africa is an almost word-for-word reenactment of Orwell's sinister metaphorical masterpiece, which exposes how greed destroys principle and ideal, and how the liberator soon becomes the new oppressor. And then I went on to the Lost Tribe angle, where if you look at this country, and I know I've got massive Spanish descent. In actual fact, if my great-great-grandfather didn't leave the villas and the vines and the Mediterranean beach and the sangria and all those things there and the senoritas, I would have probably been Spanish. But he decided to come to Africa. Bless him. He got on some ship and he came to Africa, and that's how I got here. And we all are, if you look at this lost tribe of third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation, I don't know where we are now.
Right.
Of Spaniards, Brits, Portuguese people, Dutch, Danes, Germans, Italians, French, you name it. We're a very cosmopolitan tribe of all sorts, but we are really essentially, why I'm saying we are a lost tribe is that we are actually a tribe without a homeland, and I put it in an analogy is that our former homelands, they couldn't care. And this is a little crude, but I'm going to say a used condom in a Barcelona brothel on Bull Run Day about us. We've been written off. They're not worried about their fifth, sixth generation former Spanish descendants and British descendants. They're not interested. We're on our own. We're a lost tribe here in South Africa. We're isolated. And we are basically a disenfranchised tribe. We are the economic majority. We all know the tax-paying demographics of South Africa.
Right.
You know that 90% of the demographic of tax-paying South Africans, we know who they are, and it's us. We carry that burden. Not income tax. Obviously, we all pay VAT and we all pay duties, but I'm talking about income tax. And so we're basically a disenfranchised economic majority, and that was the thrust of that story. You know, we I don't think it can ever be, or whatever has been recorded in history, that there's ever been a nation or a group of a demographic has actually willfully handed over what they earn to an oppressor to oppress them, to pass laws that are not beneficial to them. And we're doing this. We e-filing dutifully. We e-file our taxes, and we've been doing it dutifully for the last 27 years. And we've seen what they've done.
Now,
And we've seen how they've squandered. We've seen how they've changed place names
Yeah.
and what the money's been squandered on. And yet we do it. And when the Springboks play, we put on our jerseys, we wave our flags, we go paint our faces, and everybody thinks South Africa is just one big, wonderful carnival. Everything's fantastic, and that's the message we send out to the world, this lost tribe. And the sport has played a massive role in this. This distraction. That last year we won the World Cup, and I didn't make a lot of friends with people. I said, so what? What is that? What does it actually mean? What is it going to change? Change nothing.
Yeah.
It's not going to change a thing. It's just a distraction.
Now, at
And
the beginning of our conversation, I said we'd come back to South Africa today, and we're now moving into that area. What do you see the future for South Africa? Because clearly things have gone pear-shaped since 1994.
Scott, there's one thing only that I believe that can happen in this country, that's workable in this country, and that is a federal system whereby the Cape would then become cede itself from South Africa and essentially become its own country. I see the same, and you got the indigenous people in the Cape coloured folk, the Khoisan folk. You got Cape's very cosmopolitan, and I believe that would be the system for the Cape. There is a party that does it. I don't want to promote any parties, but there is a party that is trying to get a referendum for seceding. But the Cape Townians, very strange people. I don't know whether it's the nuclear power station or the fluoride in the water. They seem to think that they must vote for the Democratic Alliance, and they must keep doing it forever and ever and ever, even though after 27 years you can see that the Democratic Alliance can't do a thing.
Yeah.
Other than write letters and condemn. But there's nothing they've actually prevented in this country ever in 27 years. Where were they when Jacob Zuma disbanded the Scorpions? They couldn't do a thing about that. Where were they when Shabby Sheikh walked free? They couldn't do a thing about that. I see a federal. We need a federal system. If you go into the Free State, the Sotho people there, they don't really have a voice in this country. They're dictated to by the Xhosa Zulu majority. They're very different people. They're completely different people, different culture. And I believe that in the Free State should become its own country, if you want to call it. Gauteng, you got the huge Xhosa presence, and that would be their territory. North, you got Limpopo with the Swane and all sorts of other people living that side, and they could probably come up with some kind of a system there. Obviously, Zulu and KZN, and I believe that would be a workable system where people are ruled by their people, caring for them, instead of a central government dictating, which is there entrenched by tribal, as I say, by tribal demographics, dictating to the entire country. I don't see that working at all going forward. The thing that I'm very pro, Helen Zille last year, while she was in the wilderness, while Mumuzi Maimane was
Jumping up and down.
on stage,
Yeah.
yes, she uttered some words that actually shocked me. I couldn't believe it, because I don't really consider her to be very much of a person, a doer, more of a talker and a bit of a windbag. And she came up with something about leading a tax revolt. And I thought, wow, okay, Helen, got my attention. You got my attention now. You got my respect now. And then when the leadership debacle with Mumuzi Maimane after the elections broke, and they got rid of him, and they brought in Steenhuisen, and she landed herself a nice cushy job back in at the taxpayer's expense, she's gone absolutely dead quiet. You don't hear a word about this offer that she was going to make to save this country. She said it. She will lead a tax revolt in this country. Well, so much for that. She was at the Sona in a usual Hollywood 100,000 rand, whatever, design red dress with the red lips, and that was the last we ever heard of this drive to take the money from the ANC.
Yeah.
So I believe if you take the check Take the checkbook away. We are the economic majority. We take the checkbook away, they are going to have to listen to us.
Now, I've got to tell you that I think she's just a typical politician, quite honestly. But, you know, when we talk about taking the checkbook away, in recent days you've had Moody's putting the rand to junk. And just to, you know, put the final nail in the economy of South Africa, you've got our friend Hippo Eyes Ramaphosa, who has now put the country in lockdown. And, you know, there are people starving all over the country now as a direct result of this move. What are your thoughts about what will happen when we come out the other side in South Africa? Because it's not going to be the same country.
It's not going to be the same country. We've, you know, you look at this as a hardship, and I know people personally, and I'm trying to help them. I'm in a fairly fortunate position, but I know people who work on weekly wages. And I know a lady that is she's a lovely, wonderful, intelligent woman. She's been a career waitress at a very famous place in Cape Town, and she's relied on her income, and she does extremely well because she's a real celebrity. She's a wonderful person. Everyone knows Queenie in Cape Town, and she's probably listening. They all know her. She's an absolute character. She's a stand-up comedian.
Are you here, Queenie?
Queenie, she's out there. Shame, and there she's made a career, and she's wonderful. You know, she's had tips of, I believe, 10,000 rand from people overseas at times, because she's just an absolute lovable character, wonderful person, unique, and there she sits now, cut off. Can't earn a dime. She was never on any formal payroll, no UIF. Run out of money. Can't get food. How on earth can this be allowed?
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, we sit and we argue, you know, and we see the arguments on social media about this. And what astounds me is the amount of people that are all pro. 50 people, that's the total. 50 deaths in this country. 55 million people must hide under their beds.
Yeah,
you know.
That's the irony.
So, that's the irony, and now you know, and we don't see this because on social media we all pretty affluent people. We all, you know, can afford data, we can afford computers, we can afford all these things, and so we're seeing that side of it. We're not seeing the township side of it, where people that work on weekly wages are now running out of money. They're starting to get desperate. They're starting to starve.
They are starving.
They are starving. And what do you do?
I'll tell you the irony about this lockdown is that if you go to the townships and there are no police or army around, people are mingling as if it's just a normal day. There's no social distance.
Lockdown.
There's no lockdown, and it's a petri dish for the virus. I mean, once it gets in there, and I believe it is in there in the major townships, it's spreading. You know, it's going to be absolutely ballistic. And what the ANC government are doing is they keep on talking about this wonderful lockdown and how it's working, and clearly it's not, because of the social distance issue and even in taxis. So why have a lockdown if it's broken? Why not let the economy move forward and people get on with their lives? It's self-defeating. It
is beyond any comprehension. You look at, let's take Italy, you know, and I've done, there's all this hype and there's all these opinions, and I'm not really interested in how this originated, whether it was from a lab or whether it was from an animal or pangolin or a bat, or whether it's a cold virus or flu virus, and all these debates. All I know is that it does follow the very similar pattern to the normal colds and flus that you get. You get milder symptoms or serious symptoms, like all others. Sometimes you get pneumonia, and that is where you start running the risk that you're in serious trouble. And that follows a trend that has been for years and years and years and years and years and years. If you go back to 2009, we had the H1N1, which infected 1,000 times more people. 1,000 times more. You're talking 1.4 billion people. We see our fatalities are now, I think, 200,000 worldwide. 575,000 people died with the H1N1.
Yeah.
We didn't shut the world down. There was no need for that. It was
No, that's
it was a
exactly
far
right.
more contagious virus. Now I know people that you know, you catch a cold, you get over it, and a lot of people who have had COVID have recovered. They do catch a cold, they get over it. It doesn't
Right.
deteriorate into something serious. And there's also nutrition's got a huge amount to do with it as well. At the end of the day, if you look at America, they eat a lot of junk food. I look at it, they've got an obesity problem there. More than half the country's obese, so that's also a factor. But if you even look at the American figures versus the current, they lost 80,000 people in 2018 to flu and pneumonia. 80,000. I think they're sitting on now, stand corrected, I think it's, what is it, 30,000? I'm not sure, in America.
Right. It's about
So
37,000.
2018, so 37,000.
Yeah.
There's still some 50,000 to go before you get close to 2018, which was no pandemic, no shutdown, no lockdown. But this is now, they're going to now shut it down. And I know people are going to, you can never determine whether this worked or not. It's going to be impossible. You can't win. You know, did it work or didn't it? It could have been much worse. It could, maybe it wasn't. But well, I'm pleased that Sweden has basically not done it. Brazil
Yeah.
also haven't gone into lockdown.
Now,
The
Chris,
figures are in line.
Chris,
Mhm.
Queenie is here.
Yes.
Queenie is here.
My goodness.
Queenie, do you have Skype? If you can just say yes or no in the side chat, and if you'd like to join us, seeing that you know Chris, we'll bring you into the conversation. So just we'll do this sort of spontaneously, and yeah, I'll just wait for Queenie to respond. It takes a while for the audio to go through. So we're talking about the impact of this lockdown on the economy in South Africa. And we're talking about
Yes.
the starving masses in these townships, with a double blow going to be the coronavirus when it actually starts flying through there. There's going to be anarchy in South Africa. I don't see how there can be any other outcome, do you?
Yeah, it is extremely concerning. There's no doubt about it. You know, our season is all seasonal, and it's you know, for the 26th of March is way ahead of our flu seasons. Way. We only go into flu season really in earnest in May, when season changes after Easter. So already that period was definitely an overreach, and very much way too soon.
Right.
As a measure. And as I say, if you're looking at a country like Sweden and Brazil, where Bolsonaro is basically, he fights with these states, he lifts the lockdown, they reinstitute it, but it's very loosely applied there. You look at Singapore and other countries who haven't gone into lockdown. Their figures are absolutely 100% normally in line. Sweden's figures are normal.
Well, Singapore's an amazing
Exactly.
economy in its own right.
Yeah,
Absolutely amazing.
Amazing economy, very dense, very densely populated
Yeah.
place as well, and they didn't shut down the entire economy. Now we run the risk. There is no chance if this virus now on medical grounds, and what we've done is to try and flatten. They call flattening the curve.
Right.
Our curve is only going to start spiking next month, and in June and July even more so.
Right.
So are we going to sit in lockdown till August, till winter is over? What will be left of this country?
It's absolutely crazy.
Do these people understand history? Do they remember the Great Depression last century? Are they aware of how economies work?
I tell you what the problem is, Chris, that they've got no logic. The L factor is completely missing in action. They can't. Look, Fiona's here. Fiona we call the White Zulu, and she grew up as a Zulu, basically. I mean, she was on a farm and all her friends were Zulus. And she hit the nail on the head. And so many people have said the same thing, that there's no understanding of the impact of your actions now in the future. It doesn't. It's not part of their language. They talk about the now. They don't talk about the past. They don't talk about the future. It's just the now, and that's the problem.
The consequences, I've noticed that too, unfortunately. It's very much a now without considering consequences. I've seen that. You can look at the reason for the Eskom, and I don't want to go into that subject too deeply, but the lack of maintenance there. They don't understand the fact that preemptive maintenance is essential to avoid breakdowns. They wait till it breaks.
Yeah.
I did encounter a lot of that mentality. I've employed a tremendous amount of people in my life. I ran networks of 30 odd stores. hundreds of people working, and I encountered that mentality, and I said, don't you see why you need to maintain, to prevent, but it's not broken? They come back. I said, but you cannot wait for something to break. When it breaks, you've got a massive, massive problem. You've got to prevent. It's called preventative maintenance.
Yeah.
It's a concept that's lost. And unfortunately, it's impacted tremendously on us, our infrastructure. We're sitting with a nightmare, unreliable electricity supply. And our
look at
economy-
service delivery. Look at service delivery in every single municipality except for one, Orania. That kind of just
Orania,
spells out the difference.
it absolutely stands out. What can be done if your money is not misappropriated and you have people who work? We've got a double whammy here. It's not only corruption, it's not only dishonesty and theft and looting, it's incompetence on top of it.
Yeah.
The National Party, a lot of people say, they were just as corrupt. I said, no, well, maybe they were. I don't know. But at least one thing I can tell you, they did their job. Their departments ran.
Yeah.
They did their job. They might have been corrupt. Maybe they did also loot and steal, but they made sure that those departments were run properly and efficiently. And I said, we got a double whammy here because we got guys stealing. They get the budget. They can, we had that slogan in 2010, I can feel it. It is here.
Right.
And that's what they do every year when they collect the tax. It's coming. I can feel it. It is here. And they help themselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely help themselves. And then the worst part of it is they're not even competent. They don't even work. They're traipsing overseas to go and see how to improve their service delivery in the high streets of Paris and Milan. Singapore. I've seen thousands of them in Singapore.
Yeah.
And I was very, very distressed. I actually had to be held back by someone who was with me. I said, you know what, this is it now, and not South Africa. It was Mr. Sydney Mufamadi.
Well, I think there's
Sydney Mufamadi and I. We can have a chat.
Yeah, I think there's always a silver lining in a cloud, and I think that silver lining could come through the circumstances of the lockdown, and what it could be is that people in the township, they just rise up against the ANC government, and you can be sure.
That's irony.
And you can be sure that if that happens, that people like Ramaphosa will be catching a plane and flying off to somewhere like Dubai to get out of here, and that'll leave a huge hole politically. Now, if that happens, and I'm saying if it happens, that would be the perfect opportunity to actually secede a part of South Africa, because there wouldn't be a government.
Very much.
And you could actually say, okay, there are borders. We're going to take over this piece of turf, and then you just change it. I mean, that could be the silver lining. And
a power vacuum, absolutely. We'd rather have a power vacuum than what we've got currently. Can't be any worse. Yes, the irony is, Scott, the irony I found quite funny enough is, South Africa was hailed as this miracle nation and an absolute shining example of integration and forgiveness and all these great things. And progressive, we're one of the most progressive countries, most tolerant countries. And here we are now during this lockdown with the most draconian lockdown in the world, absolutely by far the most draconian. They're beating up people. They're implementing absolutely putrid, pathetic controls, and these people are experiencing at the hands of their very own party brutality. They don't even think that the ANC, that the old National Party meted out. You're getting made to do press-ups and sit-ups and getting your boot on your face and harassed. And you're quite right, Scott. I've got a funny feeling that this could be a massive pushback.
Yeah, I think there is going to be a massive pushback. I think Lutuli House will be burnt down by the time the lockdown is over. I mean, that's got to be a target of these people who are they've had enough. I mean, they realize now. Yeah, they've had enough.
Absolutely. You cannot blame these people. These guys are sitting holed up in their mansions. I mean, Mr. Ramaphosa owns a home that would be on par with anything in Hollywood plus. He really needs it to serve his people. It's obviously, it must be very taxing serving people. You need a huge mansion with about 14 bedrooms and jacuzzis and all the like. Being a freedom fighter for your people, it's tough. So yes, they're sitting in luxury. There's a prohibition now, I bet they're still putting away the 12-year-old Johnny Walker Blue.
Oh, yeah.
They're still having a lovely time. There are people eating 2-minute noodles, which have got no nutritional value whatsoever, just to stave off hunger.
Yeah, well, we actually had we had Patrick driving out to Boshoff just a few days ago, and he delivered 12 food parcels to a family who literally for a week had been living on rooibos tea. They didn't have any food at all. A white family, husband, wife, and a young girl. And now they've got food to the end of the year. But there's so many examples of this happening right now in South Africa. And it's not just white people, it's obviously black people, it's colored people. Absolutely. It is a complete disaster what's going on in South Africa. And what you've got is, as you said, what you've got now is the police and the army enforcing the isolation, the lockdown. So people are like in jails at home. It's just tragic, absolutely tragic.
It is absolutely tragic. But as look, there's no question of doubt that once this ends, and we certainly hope that sanity prevails and the lockdown is lifted, and that the economy can carry on and factories can start up again. But I think the damage is just about terminal in any event. But anyway, let's hope that they make a good pragmatic decision. I don't know when it's supposed to end. Is it the end of this month or early May? If they extend it any further, I foresee absolute mayhem.
Right.
I foresee mayhem in this country.
I can't disagree with you. Now, I just want to address people watching. We've got about 350 people watching at the moment. If there are any questions you'd like to pose to Chris, please throw them into the side chat. And Jaco, if there are any that we've got, can you just pass those questions over now, and we'll start putting them to Chris.
100%. What I want to just say while we're waiting, Scott, is it's quite amusing. You've had that I'm Staying group.
Yes.
And then you've had the other group. You've had the SA Shutdown group.
Yes.
And if you take both of them, they both got what they wanted. More than they wanted.
Yeah.
I'm staying. Yes, you are staying. You're right, you're staying. You're staying right inside your house. You're not moving out of your house. So they got what they wanted. And the SA Shutdown wanted a 3-day shutdown of the country. Well, hey, try 3 weeks, maybe try 3 months. So I think they both got more than they bargained for. So these hashtags, I've got a hell of a problem with hashtags. People starting hashtags for this cause and Me Too and all that nonsense. It's so superficial.
Right.
It's so I'm not a hashtag fan. I'm not a I'm not a technology fan. Gandhi warned us. He said, "There's got to be more to life than making it go faster."
Now, talking about Gandhi, you met a very famous philosopher when you were at Radio 702. Tell us about that. Now, but while you're telling, I'm going to go to the little boys' room, so take your time and
I'll be right back. I'll tell the story of my encounter with the guru.
Okay, I'll be right back.
100%, Scott, 100%. All right, what happened was I was a marketing manager I was in Johannesburg for 4 years, and I'd ascended the corporate ladder. Worked mostly for myself most of my life, but I'm very happy that I did that because it was a wonderful experience. It was with a company affiliated to Goodyear, and I got myself into a big position. I bungled my way into a position. They obviously thought that they mistook my sort of eccentric ways and strange demeanor as some kind of genius, and I became a guru. I became a marketing guru. So what happened was I was one morning with my PR, and she was briefing me on my week's activities, and then she just slotted in a thing that I had to be at the 702 radio studio at 2 o'clock that same day. So I said, "Well, hold on, what's this? What's happening?" She said, "No, you're going to 702." So I said, well, why? So she said, well, it's probably for something that you're doing. We were sponsoring a big rally on the East Rand. We were into motors, sport and all that type of thing. So I thought, fair enough, I can handle that. Not a problem. So I went across Julie at 2 o'clock to arrive at the studio. There's this chirpy, cheery lady sitting in the reception. They were expecting me. They guided me up to the studios. I see inside the studio there, inside the studio is Barry Ronga and Deepak Chopra. So I thought, well,
I'm back.
You're back 100%. So I just got to the stage where I arrive upstairs and I see Deepak Chopra and Barry Ronga in the studio and they're on air, the big red lights on air. So I thought, obviously, it's got nothing to do with me. So I chirped the lady, you know, I'll try to be a comedian wherever I go. And I said to her, look, where must I go and do my makeup? So she says, she says, no, don't worry, it's radio. I said, yeah, well. So I said, okay, where am I going to do my, and I still quoted because Tanya, my PR, said, no, it'd probably be a canned recording. Something to do with publicity for the sports slot, maybe, because we're sponsoring a rally.
Right.
So I thought, I can handle it. I said, where am I going to do my canned recording? So she looks at me. Said, what do you mean? So I said, no, I've been told. She said, didn't Tanya brief you? So I said, what? She could see my face starting to drop. She says, you going in after Deepak and Barry come out. So I said, are we going to do the recording? She said, no, you're going in live. So I said, excuse me? Terror written all over. I could see the terror in her face too. I said, what? So I said, how long? So she says, only the first hour. I said, only the first hour. I don't know what it was in for. It just felt like Mike Tyson had just delivered
a body blow.
Absolutely. And I thought, well, run. So I thought, I'm not prepared for this. I'm going to run. And before I could run, the door opened and David Sullivan came walking in, greeting me like a long-lost friend he's never met. Chris, how you doing? We're going in there, and blah, blah, blah. You okay? Having a cup of coffee. And then next thing, Deepak Chopra and old Barry Ronga straight out of the studio. Here I'm standing face to face with Deepak Chopra, and I wrote the way I pointed in my book. Is nothing upsets my karma more than a new age guru. And we all know Deepak Chopra is the guru of karma. You know,
yeah.
That's easy into all of that thing. And I'm standing there with him. Yeah, shaking his hand, and we're having some trivial chat about all sorts of things and etc. Then obviously we're going with Sullivan, and I sat down, and Sullivan set me up much like this with a mic and earphones, and he saw. I said, "Listen, David, I didn't know about this. I don't know. What are we even talking about?" He said, "We're talking about you." What are we talking about? The rally? And no, it's you. I said, "Oh, for heaven's sake!" Anyway, we got through the whole thing, but I remember sitting there, and it was quite funny because I went to sat on the seat, and I noticed how overweight Mr. Chopra was, the man who says you must do all things in moderation and balance and all.
Yeah.
I just noticed how rotund he was, and I could feel the warmth, and he was still standing outside the studio, and I saw his big, wide girth, and I could feel the warmth of his seat. You know, I always say the most uncomfortable feeling you could ever have in life is a warm toilet seat. Mm. That is the most uncomfortable feeling I've ever experienced, you know, and this was almost similar, and I thought it disturbed my karma. It was still warm from his big posterior.
Yeah.
And
but
that was my experience with Deepak Chopra.
Now, I need to ask you a question, because I've met some people in my life, and only a handful of people, where they have like a presence, they have like an aura that just sort of exudes from them. Does Deepak Chopra have that, or is he just like anyone else? I mean, does he have that sort of presence?
He actually came out of there, it was quite ironic. He seemed very agitated. And I also found that quite curious. He seemed to be pretty agitated about something. I don't know what it was. Maybe some caller had given him a hard time on the show or something, but he wasn't happy. And he seemed pretty agitated. But yes, he does have he's the kind of person who will walk into a room and command. You get those kind of people. They will walk into a room and instantly command that room. They've got a presence which is intangible. It is tangible, but you don't know what it is. But when they walk in, you somehow know. Everyone knows that they're there.
Right. And
he did have certainly that kind of aura, I would say, yes.
Right. Okay, now we've got one question for you so far. Please, guys, just throw your questions into the side chat. Ron asked, is Chris's family Sephardi or Ashkenazi Jews? He's just interested to know.
I actually do not know. I just know it's a Danish connection, the Danish-Jewish connection. They were Jacobsen, and well, that was obviously, it was initially Schweig was the name, the surname on my mother's side. I haven't. I really didn't go into it. I didn't. I dabbled when, as I say, I wasn't. We were brought up in a very a-religious environment. We didn't go to church, and I wasn't. I didn't really have any kind of hardcore beliefs, but I followed the Jesus story, and I believed that I was a Christian. And then I thought, well, I'm Jewish, and I'm not allowed to believe in Jesus. And I actually met someone one day who was, someone was pretty interested in me. We were on a date, and I ended up really incurring wrath from her when I told her that I actually discovered that I'm Jewish, and she was too. And then I told her, but I'm Christian, and she said, you can't be. It's impossible. I said, well, yeah, I am. Feel me. I'm here. I'm here. That's me. And she wasn't very amused, and unfortunately, that was the end of that. Unfortunately, she was very pleasant. But that's what it was. So it was I haven't really studied the Judaism and the different sects of it. I think it's wonderful. I know a lot of Jewish people, and I think it's the mysticism and the traditions and the Shabbats. They have a celebration every week, and it is a lovely tradition. 4,000 years of absolutely beautiful tradition.
Yeah.
And I really respect it, and but I do not know if I'm Ashkenazi or what the other one was. I can't even recall what it was. I don't know.
That was Sephardi. Now, just
Sephardi,
yeah, just moving on to a topic we have touched on, which is this lockdown. Now, you like myself believe that there's a deep state, and what's going to happen now with this lockdown is I feel it's going to be used like a trial run to see how people can be controlled at a time when the deep state decide they want to do things. What are your views on the deep state?
Scott, there is no question. If you look at America and you look at Donald Trump, he's highlighted a lot of things. He's brought a lot of things to the fore about the deep state. No one knew about it. It used to be in the realm of conspiracy theory, but one can see it clearly. He's got absolutely every entity within that country working against him: the FBI, the CIA. Obviously, the clowns, the Democrats, Nancy, the gin-soaked, never sober, can't string a coherent sentence together. Joe Biden's got Alzheimer's. He does. I keep saying if he wins the election, they're going to have to remind him he's president every 15 minutes. But he won't. He will never win the election. But anyway, the point is that he's got absolutely nobody. He's a man alone. He's got nobody he can trust. Not even within the Republican Party, he's had so many people let him down, and he's appointed and had to go and then fire and reappoint. So he brought out two very, very, very important things, and the one was deep state, and the other was fake news. No one had ever called it before; it never existed. So that's his legacy, and a lot of people still deny that there's such a thing as a deep state. You cannot deny it; it's there. If you actually look at the CIA. And into the history, and you delve into the history, and you see the kinds of experiments. There's a thing, and I'm not going to go into it here now, and people can go and Google it. It's out there. For how long, I don't know, because I've noticed that Google is very swift with their algorithms in removing things and hiding them and shuffling them down the order. But you can go and Google the MK Ultra mind control experiments conducted by the CIA, and then you can also, if you go into history of conspiracy theory, they created the term conspiracy theory to counteract anybody with counter mainstream narrative. It would be assigned to conspiracy theory and be laughed off. And that is the sinister nature of this deep state. There's no doubt that it exists. Nobody can dispute that.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you this question. China, you know how authoritarian it is. It's actually retraining how people think. 1 million people who are Muslim in the western part of China behind these internment camps. They're actually being retrained to think like Xi wants them to think. And this is a deliberate event that's happening right now in China. And there are about 1 million people involved in this whole program. And if you look at what's happened in China now with the mobile phones, they use that to track where every citizen is. And tracking and tracing. Here in Australia, they've made this app, but it's only voluntary. You don't have to use it, but if you use it, they can track and trace you. And of course, I'm not going to use it. But a lot of countries are actually saying to people, you have to, or they can tap into your number, where you're at, without even the app. So they can actually find out where everybody is. Now, the question I'm coming to, do you think that China is like the model for what the deep state want around the world?
It could very well be. There's no question that this lockdown, if I had, say at the beginning of the year, spoken to anybody and said, and funny enough, I did say something to this effect earlier, long before the COVID, that one day we will be zoned, one day we're going to have no-go zones, and I was sort of attaching it then to this Armageddon coming, the climate Armageddon, the extinction coming, little Greta with a plats. I bought that story, and I said that story is a story that's going to end up with us being zoned and controlled. You will not be allowed to go here, you won't be able to go there, you're going to get certain passes and all that. And they laughed at me then. Well, it's happened now with COVID. You can't go here, you can't go there. So it's actually happening. There is no question of doubt that they are going to, you will never have the same freedom of movement that you had prior to this. And they know they can do it. They've just done it to 8 billion. You take these people, at most there's 1,000 of them in the world. I don't know how many there are. You can, even if you want to be generous and say there are 10,000 of them, of these big elite moguls that meet at Davos in Switzerland and decide the future. They don't allow the media there in January, but they're all there and they all decide the future of the world. And no one knows what they decide. They stand there, they pose outside the building at the beginning and they pose outside the building at the end, and no one knows what they discuss. There is no question of doubt that they are going to clamp down radically on us. So the next one will be, if we ever get out of this with the economy intact and we can and get back to some semblance of normalcy, is going to be the climate apocalypse. That's coming. We know they're going to pump that 24/7. It's dropped off the news now, obviously, while the COVID's going, but it's going to come back. And we will not be allowed to go here, we won't be able to go there, we won't be able to light a fire, and we won't be able to go fishing, and they're going to zone you. And they're going to monitor you. You already can see that they're promoting these chips, and people are going for it. They're saying it's wonderful. You got your medical records inside you. You got your financial, all your mechanisms are with you. You don't have to worry about losing things or forgetting things, and it's much safer. And this crime's gonna, not be so severe. They'll just decapitate you or cut your arm off and get your chip. But there's no question of doubt where this is going. We are walking GPS coordinates. We are basically no different. We products. They own us. George Carlin, one of my favorite mentors, and I love his stuff, and he did a little thing prior to his death about a few months before. He said, they own you. They own you. You don't belong to the club. We're not in the club, and they own you. They own your money. They own everything. And he's quite right. They own the money. We're walking around with monopoly money. It's not real money. They took the gold standard away a long time. They're going to collapse that. The monetary system's going to change, and that's where I believe they're going to go digital. That's where I believe they're going to implement us with chips. And it won't be, I believe, something that will be voluntary. To become compulsory. Right now it's a fashion statement. Look, I'm so advanced, I'm smart, I've got my chip. It's going to become mandatory, and I see that. And then if anyone can't see the perils of that, then I'm sorry. If you want to be a barcode, like a box of cornflakes in a supermarket, good luck to you. If you want to be somebody that a walking coordinator, they can see every movement and know exactly where you are at any given time, ostensibly to look after you better, well, good luck to you. But I certainly won't sign up for that.
I think that chip will also have the social credit rating of you individually as well.
Exactly. You know, there's a series called Black Mirror, very, very good. And I don't know if you bothered to watch it much, but the new ones are no good. They got Miley Cyrus in it, and I immediately just switched off. I thought, that's it. Sorry. But prior to that, they had an episode, and it was based on the social media style thing where you get rated popularity according to your social media standing, and you get points. And people circulated in point groups of 200 and 300 and 400 and 500. But if you went under 200, you became an outcast.
Right.
And it's a merit system like China has, and we're going to get that merit. So they're already toying with it over here with this R2 system in South Africa of merit points. And this is where they want to go with this. You're going to have to be a good citizen, and if you get a demerit, I'll get demerits. I'll eventually be. The episode was titled Nosedive, and it followed a woman who was very in the total, the high echelons of society, and then she offended somebody, and everybody turned on her, and she ended up becoming an outcast, and obviously her whole life just fell apart. Now, I see a similar system to that, ultimately. They are, in China, they're doing it. They are meriting people, and if you get a certain amount of demerits, it's basically, if you're a persona non grata, you don't qualify for this, that, and the other.
And the only way to get points, positive points, is to follow the political narrative. If you're a good little girl or a good little boy and you do what you're told, then you get points. So the whole thing is a complete scam. Okay.
It's ominous. It's Orwellian.
Yeah.
If you don't, I'd recommend people. I think the only thing George Orwell got wrong, he wrote a book called 1984. He should have called it 2024, maybe, or 2034, because I think he underestimated, or I think he underestimated the stupidity of people. It just took us longer to get there. Took us 40 years longer to get there, but we're there now, and we are going into a surveillance society, and we better prepare for it. I mean, the CCTV cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's going to increase.
Okay, now I've got a question here from Billy Mashamate, and he says, please ask Chris what his views were on compulsory conscription under the National Party government. Good
question. Obviously, at the time, I was very resentful and bitter, but there was also at that time there was quite a lot of people who conscientiously objected to it, and they were jailed. And I did think of that, and then I realized, I thought, no, I'm going to do this thing. I don't agree that we should be in Namibia. I got into a hell of a lot of trouble about that. The intelligence guys called me a communist. I got pulled in, interrogated by my own. What are you writing this for? I said, well, I don't believe we should be. That's not our country. But I thought I wanted to do that because, adversity builds character, and I don't regret it. If I had my life over again, I would absolutely, most certainly do it again. And as horrific as it was at times, I would not want it not to have been. I wouldn't be who I am today without it. Taught me that I can, that you can have what you can endure. It taught me that. It was an invaluable lesson. And I believe that Israel's compulsory conscription for male and female, the girls and the boys both go. And I believe that as you take this millennial generation, instant that, they haven't had a day's. I mean, for them, the biggest torture now is being inside watching TV for 14 days in slippers and gowns. They think that's unbearable. They had no idea what we went through, and that 2 years was like an eternity. I thought I'd never ever see freedom again, but we did see it through. Now, I must say, I thought it was, certainly personally, a very worthwhile thing, and I have no regrets, and I would do it again, and I believe a certain form of it might be a very good idea going forward.
Right. Now, is there a message you would like to give to all the people watching right now, or people who watch this video later, something that you'd like to talk about? Maybe it's a sort of a comment about how you think things are going to go in South Africa. Maybe it's a philosophical thought. I mean, just something you'd like to talk to people about.
Man, I believe that what we, the challenge facing South Africa is, and it's a big problem, is this apathy thing. We're a very apathetic nation. we'll moan and we'll have a gripe, but then we'll turn our steaks on the fire, and then we'll watch the rugby again on Saturday, and then it's gone and forgotten. I believe that's got to go. We have to take charge of the situation. Yeah, we have an incompetent government. We have a government that is in every respect a delinquent government. There is just no argument they should actually all be locked up. They're all criminals. We know it. The Zondo Commission, what an absolute farce. No one, Richard Quest from CNN remarked, no one in jail.
Yeah.
The whole country's been looted, no one in jail. Apathy, my friends out there listening to me, it's over. Forget about the Springboks. It's a dummy they gave you to suck. When Nelson Mandela put that rugby jersey on, you all checked your brains out. It was a wonderful con job he did in 1995. Put on a rugby jersey and we all went, wow. And that is going to be our undoing. Forget about the Cricket World Cup. It's not even going to happen this year. It's going to be next year. Forget about the rugby. Forget about all of that. Let's just fix this country up. Get up off your backside. Stop being apathetic. You're all living nice lives. You'll be brying. We're having a lovely time. But it's about to collapse. We're facing serious, serious problems in this country. And the party, unfortunately, is over. And I did upset a lot of people recently when I said so. I said, the party's over for the cafe society in South Africa. These people who are drinking lattes that would feed a family of 4. Sitting there like movie stars in an Enya video. These Cape Townians. I am a Cape Townian, but I only go there intermittently. I haven't been here for 8 years, but when I go there now, I feel like a foreigner, and I actually feel quite disgusted. I look at them, I think, what superficial people. Absolute materialistic, empty-headed nothings.
Yeah.
Living for the moment, totally oblivious.
Yeah.
Living in our own little movie. So all I can say is, South Africa, time for us to wake up. All of us to wake up. And I believe that even in the, and everyone's saying, yes, you're a white guy saying, I don't know. I'm talking to, I know black people are hugely discontent, and I believe half of them would readily support us if we actually got up. Not just a one-day Mardi Gras like they had in Cape Town with that silly little march there. I mean, it was laughable. Selfies, and then the next thing they're taking, they're taking selfies and posing. And I did my march. I don't know if you recall that stupid march they had in Cape Town. And it's laughable. We're going to have to do something concrete.
Right.
We're going to have to get up off our jacks. We do not have the luxury of apathy much longer. Our economy is going to collapse. This country is in for hardship like it's never experienced in history. Wake up. That's all I can say to the people out there. Wake up.
Right. Now, I've got a question here from Gordon. He says, I'd like to ask Chris if he thinks an armed insurrection could save South Africa.
As an ex-military guy, and I'm still pretty fit, and I know I could, and I would not like that to be the only outcome, or possibly. I believe it's financial. I believe through the income tax boycott, I think we can achieve it. I believe that we can go for international. If our opposition parties actually were not just sitting there feeding their faces at the buffet, and actually got off their backsides and actually united instead of looking after their own little turfs and their own little portfolios, and we actually presented a case, and I mean really a serious case internationally, that we would get this government on its knees. I don't think it'll be necessary to fire around. We take the money away from them, we arrest them. They need to be arrested. Cyril Ramaphosa actually needs to be arrested. He's got away with murder at Nakandla. He stole the BEE coffers broken. We all know it. Everybody knows it. And there he walks around. I'm sorry, but these guys need to be brought to justice, and that is the only way. I would not like to see a war, but I'd like to see some really determined action from opposition parties in this country. Cut the political game out. It's not going to achieve anything. The ballot box will not solve a problem in this country. It's going to stay the same into eternity. 67% of the vote will always be to the left of the Democratic Alliance. And yes, the ANC's majorities come down to 55%, but then you add back the EF F's 12%, he back to 67. So there's been no demographic shift whatsoever in this country. So we really need, I believe, an international. We've got AfriForum out there, and they do go and make a noise here and there, I believe, and I don't think they're doing enough. I believe this is a crisis. There needs to be intervention in this country.
Yeah. Now, Rick has asked, what do you suggest we do?
We do. What do you suggest we do?
Yeah.
We need to put pressure on the last election. Let's just take the last. I've never voted in South Africa, ever, and I always get lambasted for it. The last election in South Africa, I don't have all my numbers with me, but I know that it was only 40. I think it was just about 46% of the country voted in total. 54% did not vote. Now, there's already a lesson there. Was that a legitimate election? 54% of your country eligible voters don't vote.
Right.
Now, is that an election?
No.
And I don't believe that was an election. I believe that should be challenged. There is a problem the rest of the world needs to be aware of. South Africans have given up. They're disillusioned. You get 46% of the people going to vote. There's a problem. More than half your people in the country don't bother. They've given up.
Yeah. Now,
so I believe that what we need is an absolute boycott of elections.
Right.
Don't partake in this meaningless thing. Forget it. No election.
Now, Billy said,
that's my view.
Billy said, if we stop making everything about race, something progressive can certainly be done. It shouldn't be black this, white that. Now, Billy, before I pass this question over to Chris, I just want to say from my side, the problem is that this ANC government has actually thrown that ball right into the middle of the room. And you just have to look no further than the employment policies, what's happened in the last few weeks when it comes to funding of businesses that have been disadvantaged by the lockdown, where they say you've got to have 51% black ownership before you get a cent. This is where the problem is in South Africa. The ANC have made it about race. That is the issue, and that's why we talk about it, because the ball's there in the middle of the court. It won't go away. It's sitting there. If the ANC got rid of all these racist policies, we wouldn't be talking about this. Now, sorry, back to you, Chris. What do you feel about that?
No, that does come up, and I get tired of that race card. It's not about that. It's about people experiencing a hardship in this country across all barriers and all races. So that's long gone, and I don't entertain that debate. You're quite correct that the ANC does. They still harp. How many times do you hear utterances about white privilege? I mean, what white privilege? Can somebody please explain white privilege to me? I don't see it anywhere. I've never experienced it in my life. Yes, I could catch a different bus to some people. I stood in a different queue to some others, but I wasn't privileged. I went off to the army. I was forced to. No, I don't believe it's about race. I believe we've got to drop that thinking completely. There's no place for it. It's about right-minded people who want this country to work. It should be thriving with all our mineral resources, with our strategic positioning, with our fantastic climate. We should be a powerhouse country, not a pauper state that we are in. We are being looted.
Yeah.
They are stealing this country. That is the issue. It's nothing to do with race. Everybody needs to face that fact. We need to do something about that.
Right.
So I don't buy the racist thing. I think we're all in it together. I know a lot of black guys, colored people. I went to a multiracial school. I was very anti-apartheid. I went to Salesians for a while, and it was a multiracial school. The only reason I left it was a Catholic school, and I didn't enjoy some of the priests and some of their rather bizarre methods. So I requested to leave the school, something I never even told my parents to this day. That I don't know why I did, but I witnessed something pretty awful there. But that's another subject. So yeah, no, I don't buy the race card. It's a distraction.
Right. I've got a few more questions that have come through. So I'll just throw them at you. Storm Chaser asks, do you think we should sell our property right now?
Oh man, I tell you, if you can, good luck to you. I think the property market market's in for a horrendous fall. I've already heard houses that were on the market in our area here that were 1.8, 1.9 down desperately down to 1.2. You've had a 30 odd percent decline in property values and demand. If you can, have a go. I can't see the upside of it. Unless there's a miracle in this country. We called 1994 a miracle. That wasn't a miracle. Maybe we'll have a miracle in 2020. Get rid of this oppressive government and install a government that represents the country and will represent the country and will be honorable and not a former. These people were never trained. They were a terrorist organization. They were handed over power. They weren't experienced. Yeah. And I don't mind that. I mean, if they were incompetent, I would have said that's fine, give them a gap. But no, it's not just the incompetence, it's the absolute wholesale looting, the extravagant lifestyles. It's sickening, it's disgusting, it's a crime against humanity. The hospitals that can't look after people because their MECs and their ministers of those departments are living it up, milking it, and while they can't treat people properly in hospitals. This is a crime against humanity that's going on, and it's shocking. And how they've gotten away with it so blatantly is beyond me.
Well, I can tell you why they got away with it, because of fake news. The media don't talk about it. That's the problem.
They don't. You don't see on the news when the trucks are burning on the highways. The only way we know about it, where they were having those horrendous service protests, which are obviously now abated. But you don't see that. There's only people who in cars that actually post this kind of thing on social media. On the ENCA news, you will absolutely anybody watching will think South Africa is a wonderful paradise.
Yeah.
And it's burning everywhere. It's burning, but you don't see that.
Yeah.
So yeah, fake news, 100%.
Now, Functional Fitness has asked, please ask Chris what he thinks of a non-violent takeover by Boer-Religion when the state collapses into anarchy. Would we gather enough momentum supported by the greater portion of South Africa?
It's a very good question and a difficult one to answer. I don't believe that would be personally my leaning. Boer-Religion sounds very right-wing to me. I don't know much about them. I believe it needs to be. We've got such a fragmented society. You got freedom fronts, you've got solidarity, you got the AfriForum, you got those guys. For heaven's sake, let's all just get together. We all want one thing. We want to get rid of the ANC. Let's just cope with. I had such huge hope, and I actually did have quite an interaction with Mr. Lakota when he was premier. And I was really seriously hoping that Cope would actually become and rise to the occasion, but unfortunately they got shunned by the media and written right out of the equation, and they're a non-entity today, which is a great pity because I admire him. I would love him to stand up and lead something.
Right.
And say to all the opposition parties, come on, let's all just set aside our silly differences here. We're now going to take these guys. And I'd like to see that.
Now, Shane's asked, what does Chris think of Dalbarton Zeitland?
I avoid these, and I know people involved in these things. I avoid these right-wing organizations. I know they've got some very good ideas and for self-determination and that type of thing, and it's working in Orania, and it is probably something that could work. Let's face it, apartheid in principle was a very clever idea. It's just when it got petty and stupid that they messed it up. But they were, it was a good idea to actually develop places where people could be with themselves and thrive. And that was the initial, I think, goal behind it. And then it got silly with the petty apartheid nonsense and racism. That was absolute nonsense. But yeah, I think people have the right to self-determination. And I'm very anti-immigration. And you're looking at France and countries like that, and Italy, and they got enormous problems on their hands now with integration. The self-determination is a good thing. I don't think the people in Orania are doing anybody any harm. I don't think if the Zuidlanders want to section off a certain part of the country and want to sort of go it alone, Let them do that. I mean, the people in Iranian are paying tax. They pay tax, VAT, they pay all their dues, but they don't require any services from the government. They provide their own services, and hats off to them. Who are they offending? How they're harming the country? They're doing that. I think that's a model that could work, and it's a model that should be allowed to work, and maybe a model that should be encouraged. There's people dependent on the state, but they're still paying their way. They're handing over the VAT, and they're paying all the other whatever excise duties and whatever it is they have to pay. So they pay their way, but they seem to be doing pretty well. It's a nice model.
Right. Now, Tace Lawrence has asked, what is your view on ULA? Now, ULA are the group who are really trying to get a secession happening in the Western Cape.
Yes. They, I haven't spent a lot of time studying their proposals. I'm pretty familiar with the Cape Party, but I believe secession is an absolutely viable thing. I think all you need to do is put it to a referendum and let the people of Cape Town decide it. I know there are a lot of people in Cape Town, you get people that are so frightened of change that they'd rather have more of the same. And I had to laugh because I do propagate it, and one person said, yeah, but how did they know? Do they know how to govern? And I said, my word. Do you think the current people running Cape Town know how to govern? Have you seen what the place looks like? It's a mess.
Yeah.
I can see it because I'm away, but you look at the estuaries there, you'll die if you swallow the water in those estuaries. That I used to swim in as a child.
Yeah.
That water will kill you. The water running out of the Dyson River beach at Dart Bay will kill you if you ingest that. Sunflower, where I used to spend my years fishing as a kid. So sad. It's a sewer. Neglect. Filth. Under the Democratic Alliance. Likewise, root flow out at Milnerton. Absolutely the most filthy water in the world. An absolute disgrace. And these Cape Townians, but the DA knows how to run. Please give me a break.
Well,
I think they should secede, and I think the Cape Party doesn't want to run. They don't want to be political. They just want a referendum, and that's what they need to do.
I think everything is kind of relevant because I have to say that the DA do run a municipality better than the ANC. I mean, the ANC are just a complete disaster. That doesn't mean to say the DA do it right. I think the DA are a complete disgrace, quite honestly. If you look what's happening in Cape Town, the way they're treating the homeless people, the way they're just knocking down shacks at Khayelitsha, the way they treated the elderly whites in this little the homeless whites at Mamre, which is the northern part of Cape Town.
Yes,
it's absolutely shocking the way that they're treating people. And then, as you say, they go home and they sit down behind the TV with their bottle of brandy and they drink all night long and, have a great time. They just cut everybody else out of the picture. It's just crazy. Now,
absolutely. No, I think Cape Townians, more of the same. No, I think they need to, the people in Cape Town, if you can get an opportunity to get a referendum, you vote that and take a chance for heaven's sake. It can't go on.
Yeah.
We can't be dictated to by the Thule House or the Thule House. We just cannot be any longer.
Well, that's what the ULA are working on. Now, Storm Chasers said, Chris, you say it's not about race. Just out of interest, which is the best black-run country in the world, in your opinion?
Botswana seems to be pretty stable. Crime rates are very low. I think they do pretty well.
Isn't that run by the Oppenheimers, Botswana, effectively? De Beers, the diamond mines?
I think it probably plays a huge role in the people that do run the country, because they certainly are a different type of entity to what we've seen over here.
Yes.
They respect rule of law. They come down on crime relentlessly. Still have the death penalty. There's still some kind of respect for law in the country and law and order. So it may be as a result of the influence of De Beers. It could well be that. But they would stand out to me. Sadly, that seems to be.
That's it.
You've got to look at Namibia, and I must say, having been in Namibia, and it's a wonderfully beautiful country.
Right.
And I certainly think Sam and Jomo turned out to be quite a surprise. He's no longer there, obviously, but he also took no nonsense, no striking. Everybody worked. He got that country going, and I would cite Namibia as being a very, very positive, certainly very positive sounds. People that are coming from South Africa that come down, that I bump into, there's no crime, hardly any crime. You don't have to lock up.
Right.
It's a country that's working, and we could also learn if we could go and look at that blueprint. And it was hard work, no nonsense, rule of law applied. We have got this very soft approach to it, thanks to the likes of the old black sash people that we now have sitting in the DA slurping up their caviar. Unfortunately, it doesn't work in Africa. It does not work. You need to have laws, and there need to be respect for law and order, and we just don't have it in this country. I mean, it's laughable the amount of people get paroled, they go in, they go out. We've got guys serial. They actually come out of jail. They immediately return to doing what they did. So they go back to jail because they enjoy it in jail. They've got a TV set, a nice bed, they don't have to work, they're fed. They're quite happy to go back to jail. There's no deterrent at all to them. No deterrent at all.
Yeah.
So yes, we need to just clamp down. I'm not into police states and into police brutality, but man, I think we've just lost it here. We've gone too soft.
Right. All right. Now, I think we've pretty well covered all the key issues, Chris. Is there anything that I haven't discussed that you would like to bring up?
Man, I think we have pretty much covered it.
We've been going for well over 2 hours.
I just wanted to do, yeah, I see so, time flies. I didn't follow on from P.W. Botha when I got that.
Yeah, tell us about that.
That court case. I just want to quickly, it was one of my little triumphs. I arrived at the court, and outside the court there was a captain, an army captain, and a beautiful, beautiful blonde girl from Pretoria, and she said, "Where's your lawyer?" So I said, "I don't have one." And she rolled her eyes, laughed, she got other lieutenants and whole crew of army legal guys there with her. So she says, "Well, you better just plead guilty." I said, "I'm not going to." Rolls her eyes again. You realize that you can't beat the Conscription Act, it's impossible. And you only hope is to actually just go in there and plead guilty, and maybe you will get a suspended sentence or a reduced sentence. I said, "I'm not going to do that." She just wrote, and I got a bit scared. She's sort of unnerved me because you can't beat it. So anyway, again, and they read out the usual clauses, transgression of Act, so and 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 so, etc., etc., etc. The judge says, "How do you plead, Mr. Elsom, not guilty?" So she says, "Okay, what do you have to say?" So I start going off, and I tell her that obviously I heard my story about what happened in my post-traumatic stress things, and obviously that was the sentimental side of it, subjective, but it also counts in court, and it did that day. Normally it doesn't, but it did. So what I said was, "I'm not sure a woman will understand what I'm about to say." And she was a female judge, a woman. She picked up the gavel, and I knew. I thought, what a moron. What an absolute moron. You go on smooth move, you're going to upset the judge in the first sentence you've uttered, you absolute idiot. And she says, "I'll have you in contempt if you cast any further dispersions on my ability to preside over this matter, Mr. Elsom. Do you understand me?" Looking over her glasses, and I thought, well, that's it, jail. Yeah, I go again. I'm off. So she says, "Okay, proceed." So I proceed. So I had I said exactly what I said earlier. I said I went up there, SWAPO, my enemy, changed it to ANC, now changed it to AWB. I've had enough of them changing my enemy. Sick of it. I've had it. They've ruined my life. All about the post-traumatic stress. It set me back 13 years. And Final, last thing, I didn't really count on it, but I brought it along with me, and this is actually what saved me. They had given me call-up papers with contradictory amount of days owing. They had increased the days owing to them. You always got your call-up saying you still owe 68 days of service or whatever. And somehow the one paper contradicted the other. So she called for those papers. And I thought, all right, well, did I have those papers? So she says, "Okay, we'll adjourn." So the blonde captain comes to me and she says, "I'm so sorry you've done that. And I could see she was actually really concerned for me. She said, I'm so sorry you've done that. You should have just pleaded guilty. So I thought, well, I said, I took my chances. So the judge comes walking back, and it was quite an amazing scene. It was quite suspenseful. She sits down, there's silence. Eventually she clears her throat, she says, and she paused. She actually did it very theatrically. And I must say, I had to just about go and change my underpants the way she did it. She says, I have never seen such an ill-prepared case. And she paused. So I thought, here we go. Presented by the South African Defence Force. Case dismissed. And that was mine. I waited for that captain outside the building because she didn't want to look at me. I stayed in the corner. I said, wait, Cap, look at me. I'm such a monkey now for not defending myself. And she avoided me, and I caught her outside. And I just looked at her and I said, was it such a stupid decision to plead not guilty? She didn't. She just shook her head, and then I blew her a kiss in the car when she drove off. She just blushed. And that was my little moment of glory. I actually got out of that one too. Yeah, Scott, look, it's been fantastic. I think we have overshot. I can't believe it. It's 2 hours. It's
yeah, time flies when you're having fun. Well, look, I just want to say to the moderators in the side chat, they come on every night with our live streams, and keep up the fantastic work, guys. It's lovely to see the regular crowd here. We have a community channel on Loving Life, so we have like this huge extended family, and the live stream is where people interact and share jokes, and a lot of people now are actually emailing each other privately, so it's grown into a huge family, which is lovely. I love that concept of what the Loving Life channel does. So to all our people watching the live stream, thank you so much for being here tonight. For people who will watch it later, I hope you enjoyed the live stream. I certainly have. I think that Chris is an amazing guy. I travel a lot, and I love to hear people's stories of when they travel and things that they've experienced, because memories, let's face it, no one can take away with you. They can put you inside a prison, but inside your head you have those memories, and that's really the most important piece of baggage that we take with us throughout our life, and right to the very end. No one can take that away from you. Absolutely priceless.
Absolutely priceless. They are. They're worth more than, people always say to me, because I spent millions traveling, and they said, wouldn't you rather have had a house? I said, oh, please. Those memories, I don't regret a dime. I don't regret a day, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
I could sit down one day when I really pack it all in, and they do entertain me to this very day. I relive them all the time.
Yeah.
Wonderful, and I hope I can do it again.
Well, your memories that you've shared with us, thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight, Chris. So I'm going to shut down the live stream now, and just as always say to everybody who watches this video, and especially the people watching right now, please stay safe. Take care. I know that times are turbulent, but we'll come through the other end, and Loving Life channel will be there. Alrighty. Bye for now, guys.
Great stuff, Scott. Thanks very much. Thanks, people. Thank you. Good night.